Okay, so today let's talk about book two of the nature, accumulation, and employment of stock. Introduction. So the introduction has these three key points. First, no stock is needed to be accumulated in primitive societies. Why is that, right? Because in primitive societies, division of labor is not being carried very far. Everyone pretty much does everything, produce everything they need. So there's really no need to stock up provisions ahead of time. But division of labor makes stock necessary, right? Because now everyone lives by exchanging their own produce with other people's produce, right? And a sufficient stock of goods must be stored up to maintain one's subsistence and to supply one with the materials and tools of one's work, right? Before this person can produce and or sell their goods. And division of labor and accumulation of stock advance together, right? Because as division of labor being carried out further, the productive power of labor increases. And then as a result, we can accumulate more stock, right? Because more is being produced. And also, as the productive power of labor increase, the same amount of workmen, they need more materials to work on, right? Because they're producing more, they need more material, more tools to work with. So as a result, the division of labor and the accumulation of stock, they go hand in hand. Okay, chapter one, the division of stock. So this chapter talks about how we can categorize the stock, right? Either of a man or of a society. It can be divided into three parts. One part for immediate consumption. The other part is circulating capital, and then the last part is fixed capital, right? So how does Adam Smith define capital, right? So capital is the part of the stock for a person or of a nation that's being used for generating further revenue, right? And whatever is not being used for generating further revenue is being used for immediate consumption. And how do you distinguish between circulating capital and fixed capital, right? So the way how he defines is circulating capital yields revenue by parting away with it, by exchanging it with something else, right? But fixed capital generates revenue by keeping it in your possession, and more explanation will become will coming. All right, so what are some examples for the stock for immediate consumption? Those which that affords no profit, right? For example, like, and those that you, well, literally you consume it or use it directly, right? So food, clothes, household furniture, houses where people live in. You may argue that houses, they do offer revenue in the form of house rent, right? But the house rent itself is derived from some other sources of revenue, right? It's derived from the revenue of the tenants, right? The house itself does not produce anything. So therefore, even if in the case of renting out a house, a house where people lives in, is still considered something for immediate consumption. All right, next one, fixed capital, right? Those are the ones generating revenue without changing hands, without changing ownership, right? So for example, useful machines in a factory, right? Profitable buildings, shops, factories, as I just mentioned, improved land, right? So for example, you invest certain amount of work and I don't know, ducts and stuff to improve your field, right? And that will increase the output of your field. That is considered as a fixed capital as well. And another um, interesting thing is Adam Smith considers useful abilities acquired by people in a nation as the nation's fixed capital, right? For example, um, the knowledge you acquire through, say, apprenticeship or university education, so on and so forth. These are useful abilities that's being considered as a fixed capital for a nation. Circulating capital, right? Those that generates revenue by exchanging. So, uh, one circulating capital is money, right? Money is the means by which all the other three types of circulating capital are being distributed to different people, right? It's a means of exchange. And then there are the other three types of circulating capital as categorized by Adam Smith. One is provision in the hands of the sellers, right? So, for example, the food in the grocery store, right? And also materials of clothes, furniture, and buildings, right? So I don't know, for example, concrete, bricks, silk, fabrics, this stuff, right? They would be turned into something for immediate consumption. And then, although in the hands of the consumer, they are considered as the stock for immediate consumption, but in the hands of the seller, they are being considered as circulating capital, and then they generate the revenue when they are sold. And also complete work in the hands of the merchants or manufacturers, right? So, for example, tools and machines and I don't know, watches and so on, right? Okay, what is the relationship between these three types of stocks? Um, so give me 1 second. Yeah. So circulating capital, right? Except for money, is constantly being converted to either fixed capital or stock for immediate consumption, right? Uh, I already kind of explained that earlier, right? So except for money, the other three, right? Provisions, materials, completed work in the hands of the seller. Once they're sold, they become either fixed capital or the stock for immediate consumption. And also, every fixed capital is derived from and supported by circulating capital, right? So, for example, a machine with all its different components, right? It's made up of these individual components, which were considered as circulating capital in the hands of the seller, being put together and created a machine, which is a fixed capital, right? Now, it's a fixed capital in the hands of the person who owns this machine. And the material this machine works upon, right? As well as the maintenance of the workman, the salary of the workman working on this machine, these are circulating capital, right? So you see a fixed capital is derived from circulating capital and supported by circulating capital. Circulating capital in turn is also raised by other circulating and fixed capital, right? So why is that, right? So all the circulating capital in a nation is kept up by the produce of land, mines, fisheries, so on and so forth, right? They all come from some produce of nature, right? They cannot be generated from thin air. So And to cultivate or to extract these things, you need fixed capital, right? For example, the cattle for cultivation, the improved land, the machines and tools for mining, as well as circulating capital, right? The wages of the laborers. So in this way, right, circulating capital is also raised by circulating and fixed capital. And all in all, the purpose of the different capitals, right, either fixed or circulating, the end goal is to augment the stock for immediate consumption, right? That's why we work so hard, right? That's why we keep improving things, because we want to have better and more things that we can consume, right? So that's the end goal. All right, and that concludes my presentation of the first chapter and the introduction of book 2.